Hi, software architecture lovers. And today we continue our conversation with Ben Evans, who is one of the key GSAS speakers this year. Just to take this opportunity that Ben is also here in Barcelona. We just couldn't miss this opportunity, and we are very happy that Ben could make it and come to our office to have this face-to-face conversation. So Ben, could you share with us your software architecture, let's say, latest journey? Because you have worked for the main players in software development, software architecture industry. So how did you end up being in Barcelona? How was this journey of becoming top speaker that all conferences want to have, being a book author and collaborating with top publishers? So tell us more about how you have achieved all this.
Well, there's a lot of different threads in there. So let's start with a story I always like to tell, which is the book story.
Okay.
So I was working at Morgan Stanley, and I worked on a bunch of interesting projects, including the Google IPO. I also worked on, at that time, which is sort of around about 2008, 2009, Morgan Stanley was producing a breakthrough system, a system which changed the way that systems were architected and built, not only at Morgan Stanley, but throughout the investment banking industry. And it's what the jargon is: a single dealer platform, just a platform which combines trading and research and everything into a single unified, almost like a portal for traders to use. Now every bank has one, but Morgan Stanley's was the first. Okay. And that also came with it a new sort of architecture, the sort of thing that we would now recognize as a step on the way to a microservice architecture. At the time, we didn't really do microservices. Again, it was 2008/9. So that was before people really started thinking about really small services. But the key aspects of it, of dispatch and federation and facading, were all present in that architecture. So that was my second big project at Morgan Stanley. And moving on from there, I found myself at Deutsche Bank, helping to rebuild a team in architecting low latency. Well, at the time we thought of it as low latency. These days I don't think we would, because latencies have changed. But to architect them in such a way that they could be very, very fast. Okay. And as the first hire into that team, I was tasked with writing the training materials for the hires that would come after me, and fixing the project's documentation and getting things ready. And I was sort of fairly cross and unhappy about being given this assignment. And after a couple of weeks, I was just thinking, there should be a book that I could just give to incoming people. And a little light bulb went on, and I went to my boss, and he said, okay, he said, if you take out all the material that's specific to Deutsche Bank, I will arrange and persuade my management that we'll give you the copyright on everything which is generic, and you can turn it into a book. So that was the start of my career of writing books. And then shortly after that, I met Martijn Verburg from the London Java community, who's now head of the Open JDK and Java group at Microsoft. And he and I got on really well, became very, very good friends, and decided that we would work together on this book. So that became the first edition of the Well-Grounded Java Developer. Which was quite a long time ago now. So that was my first step into the book world. And then I was at a cocktail party I'd been invited to a conference in Portland. It was an O'Reilly conference, and I was having
software architecture.
Yes, software architecture conference, and it was a good conference. And I was kind of headhunted by the Java editor. We were actually having cocktails in one of the museums. That was where the party was, in Portland. And outside, they have a submarine, like an old World War II decommissioned submarine, which is part of the Museum of Engineering now. So I sometimes say that, when I got hired into O'Reilly to write books for them, it was cocktails on a submarine. So that was Java in a nutshell, and that's led to a long standing relationship with O'Reilly, which continues to this day, and they're great people to work with. Yeah. So that's the sort of books, and what I found was that books and speaking and some consulting here and there and some teaching and training here and there all makes for kind of a blended career. So that's what a lot of my work from around about 2012 until about 2019 was. And then of course, the sale of jClarity to Microsoft. I actually went to New Relic because I wanted to continue working on observability and performance, and New Relic was a good place to do that because, well, it comes back to how I ended up here. I had been at that stage traveling for about 5 years and just going wherever the client wanted me to. Yeah. I had a couple of banks who were big customers, so they tended to occupy a lot of my time. And with that sort of consulting lifestyle, it's great, but there's a lot of travel. And the other thing about it, I think, is you get to see the start of a lot of projects or projects which are in trouble, which you help to come in and rescue, but you don't see the continuity, you don't see the arc of the project from start to finish. And it means that you don't also get to build the sort of long-standing relationships with your colleagues, which you might want to. So I was feeling a bit like I might be tired of that much traveling. I'd been coming to Barcelona. In fact, it was O'Reilly again who were responsible. They were having a software architecture conference here in Barcelona almost 9 years ago. And that was the first time I came, was to come and attend that conference, and just loved the city here straight away. And so I would frequently come back and visit. Sometimes I get back to London and it would be grey and raining, and I'm like, oh, there's a month before I have to go anywhere else. I could stay here, or I could just get on Airbnb and go to Barcelona for a month. So that had happened several times, and so it all just kind of came together. And I was talking to some old friends at New Relic, and they said, well, we have a big office. If you'd like to talk about something, why don't you just come and hang out at the office for a bit? And everyone was really nice. They gave me a key and just said, hey, just come and hang out when you want to, and we'll you can meet everybody and we can talk about it. So it was obviously kind of an interview process, but that was okay. And yeah, so I ended up accepting an offer to come and work at New Relic full time here. And then in 2021, I moved to Red Hat.
Okay.
So that's basically been the journey. At New Relic, I was lead architect for instrumentation. So basically, the parts of code that go into customers' applications, so that they can communicate back to New Relic, which is a software as a service observability product. So that was a big job because my background's mostly Java and JVM, although I do a lot of other things as well. But to do that sort of across all of the languages and technology stacks. And then the other thing which was interesting about that part of the journey was the move, which is kind of a big trend in observability, moving away from proprietary-based observability towards open source, and also another jump on again to open standards. So I was able to be a big part of the journey that New Relic took to move from what was fundamentally a proprietary software company to something that was open source. Now, of course, if you're a proprietary company and you have proprietary client libraries and proprietary services, and you open source the client and the protocol, okay, great. Your customers will probably be happy because they can maybe fix some bugs themselves or send you pull requests. But fundamentally, people who aren't your customers don't care all that much, right? The real transition is from open source to open standards. And that is the move that we're seeing towards things like open telemetry, Prometheus, things which are under the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, the CNCF. So that's a lot of what I'll be talking about at GSAS. Will be to that transition, and especially the developing part of open standards that we're seeing.
Wow, what a journey, Ben. We will be waiting for the book only about your background and all the journey. It's really, I think you can publish a book about it. A lot of things you can talk about. And so as you participate in a lot of events, I guess most of GSAS speakers you already know, right? In Barcelona conferences, in US-based conferences, probably in London-based conferences as well. So yeah, tell us more about your expectations and about how do you find lineup of speakers of GSAS this year?
I mean, it's a great lineup. There's a lot of old favourites and old friends there that I'm looking forward to seeing. Yeah, and there are some people, you know, there's Neil Ford and Mark Richards and Nate Shooter, for example, and you know, you just know that they're going to deliver something solid. You know, they always do. Neil in particular is always worth going to see. There's also a couple of people. Like I've been friends with Sandro Mancuso for many years,
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. Although his topic is a little novel.
It's new. It's a totally new topic. Actually, he's preparing it just for GSAS.
Okay.
It was like, it is a risky topic. Do we go for it? And I was like, let's do it because it's really based on his current experience, what let's say he and his team has lived. So I guess it will be very, very interesting and inspiring, and really like he will show what is going on this year.
Yes, and the other one which has sort of tweaked my interest a little bit is Jackie Reed. So that sort of visual style is very interesting. I've always been interested in the ways that we represent architecture and sort of just getting beyond the sort of basic block diagrams that most engineers tend to draw. So I'll be very interested in it. I've seen Jackie speak before, so that's another one I'm looking forward to.
Did you know actually that she's publishing her book regarding visual communication?
No, I didn't. That's okay. I'll have to look out for
Yeah.
that. That sounds great.
I think it will be available for GSAS, so we'll have an opportunity to get this book signed by her.
That sounds great.
I'm feeling privileged. Okay, and coming back to the main topic of the event, so modern practices in software architecture, how to be more efficient and enjoy what you actually do every day. So apart from the talk that you will cover this year, what are other practices that you would like to share with GSAS attendees?
Okay. So I guess there's two parts to that. First of all, there's what do we do in order to improve, you know, how we feel about our work, and that's a question of do you try to improve the things you like, or do you try to reduce the pain? And I think that many parts of the industry are still about reducing the pain.
Reducing the pain.
And I think that's valid. You can, if you focus on that, then that is going to improve your quality of life at work. Just things like how automated are your processes really? Do you have a good model for what genuinely needs human-based oversight versus something which can be done with a bot? I mean, so take for example a centralized configuration, a sort of a monolithic configuration project. Lots of places like that because it's got a single source of truth, it's debuggable, and it's got a nice paper trail for who changed what when. Trying to deal with configuration which is not globally centralized is actually a real problem, because how can you reconstruct things? If you're in a regulated industry, the auditor is going to say, show me what the state of the system was when this bad thing happened. And without a global configuration project, that's very difficult. So you tend to find people going that direction. The problem with it is that now you have the issue about you have lots of people making changes to the same thing. So you've got very high contention. You run the risk of things like effectively, pull request live lock, where, and so trying to figure out the pain of that and making sure that you're not in a situation where people are just basically spending ages waiting for their PRs to merge because of the number of people that are trying to commit to it. Actually accurately measuring some of those things where people are genuinely spending their time, and making sure that that's not a big chunk of their day. If your deploys are taking so long because the configuration merge is taking so long, well, yes, I mean, on the one hand, it means that people aren't working too hard and burning out, but who really enjoys the frustration of sitting around with hurry up and wait? And so I think, that might be a little cynical of me. I think it's important for a lot of organisations to first of all ensure that they've taken out those base level of things which are negatively contributing to people's happiness.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And maybe are there any other, let's say, insights or let's call it discovery of the year to end up this interview with something insightful, something that actually made an impact on you this year? What was the discovery?
That's a good question. What have I found this year that I'm really, really interested in? I think that we're kind of on the cusp of a lot of things. We're just, things are just starting to actually to come into a new phase of software. But I think it's going to be slightly different to what people expect. I mean, if you read the mainstream media and even the tech press, you'll hear a lot of people talking about LLMs like ChatGPT and so forth. But I'm still not convinced that those are going to be the aspect of AI which is the most important for programming and for software. For a number of reasons. First of all, they're extremely expensive, and I don't think that the industry has properly accounted for how much they actually cost to run. They're effectively loss leaders at the moment for the companies that have produced them, and I don't think spending that much money to attract people is sustainable. Secondly, they're not accurate enough, and we're starting to see that people are actually, for the first time this month in July, ChatGPT or OpenAI was one of the two big models, recorded a 10% drop in traffic to it.
Oh, I didn't know it.
Already. And largely people think that's because the models simply don't produce accurate enough output.
Actually, they were down for several days also. We noticed it. Well, I use it as a personal assistant, actually, like sometimes. And there were several days, like I want to ask for help, and ChatGPT was just like down, wasn't responding. It was like, oh.
Interesting. So that will be a trend, I think, to watch, is to see whether they actually can sustain the rate of people using it, whether they can actually improve the quality of the results. Because one of the problems with these types of model is, well, in classic AI, for this sort of unsupervised learning, what you do is you have a pool of data, which is your training set, then you have your verification set, and then you have a much larger set that you want to be predictive on. Okay, so you train it using the training set only, and then you test it against the verification set and check to see whether it's hit your goals, and then you sort of trust it that it's going to do the right thing on the much larger set that it's predictive on. With something which is supposed to be trained on the corpus of the internet, how do you maintain that separation? How do you prevent generated text from ending up back in its own training set? So there are all those kinds of feedback cycles, which could mean that actually this thing just doesn't get any more accurate, may actually get less accurate over time. And so without knowing that, I don't know that the general internet-based general LLMs are what is going to help us in the future. What I'm much more interested in, and so this was kind of a very long way to get around to the answer about what I think the discovery is.
Interesting. This is the topic that's...
is I think that one of the things that we're starting to see and that we'll see more of in the coming year is not supervised learning models which are trained on general internet corpus or Stack Overflow, for example, but something which is much more closely targeted for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are actually intellectual property concerns with just training on just a general set of data, because how do you really know who owns that data? Yeah. Whereas if you have a set of private corporate data which you're 100% sure of the ownership of, and it's very specific and very narrowly focused, that means that you can potentially get very, very good answers within that restricted domain. So I don't know that anyone's come up with a term for it yet. A restricted domain language model. Restricted domain. Something which is designed to focus in on just one aspect of a task at hand. So rather than trying to do general text, something which is much more highly focused. And I think that we'll start to see that in specialized disciplines like programming, and that is probably the trend that I'm picking up on.
Okay, maybe this will be the topic for the upcoming year.
Who knows?
Will you publish an article about it?
Well, I have an interest in it, but I'm by no means an AI specialist. This is just what I see from talking to people. But I need to keep a good eye on it.
Okay, thanks for sharing. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you, Ben. Very insightful. We actually conduct many interviews this year, but each of your answers are so insightful, so interesting. So like it is seen that you have a very interesting background and you have something to share. So we are really excited to have you with us this October. Thanks for coming today, and thanks for making it to our summit.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. See you in October.
See you.